This channel is called Bible Project on YouTube. If you want to watch the whole thing, go there. I don't agree with what he's saying, but you got to admit his videos are very nice, man. And nice format, nice pictures, everything about it's great. I got to admit that. So what we're trying to see, right, is, is this all about a monarchy? This thing with Moses, was he a king or was he not a king? Okay, a king, remember, is someone who gets their job through a bloodline. Okay, that's literally the definition of a monarchy. Is you got a bloodline, leaders are in leadership positions because of the bloodline. That's a monarchy. Okay, so let's see what this guy says. He's on Genesis. That's the first book of the Bible. Keep in mind, Moses wrote, everyone agrees, Moses wrote the book of Genesis. Okay, so Moses, the king, wrote this book, okay?
Book of the Bible, and its storyline divides into two main parts. There's chapters 1 through 11, which tell the story of God and the whole world, and then there's chapters 12 through 50, which zoom in and tell the story of God and just one man, Abraham, and then his family. And these two parts are connected by a hinge story at the beginning of chapter 12. And this design, it gives us a clue to how to understand the message of the book as a whole and how it introduces the story of the whole Bible. So the book begins with God taking the disorder and the dark.
Basically, he's going to say that, he made Adam and Eve, gave them the tree of knowledge, and they, and we all know they ate from the tree, and, basically what the king wants you to know. If this was a king, he'd want you to not eat the knowledge, not eat the knowledge.
Instead of trusting God, the human seize autonomy, they take the knowledge for themselves, and in an instant, the whole story spirals out of control. The first casualty is human relationship. And
then what? After they eat from the, knowledge, the tree of knowledge, they hid, and God threw them out of the Garden of Eden. The king wants you to know, don't ever eat knowledge. Don't ever eat knowledge. That's evil. You'll get punished. You'll be punished.
Series of short poems where God declares to the snake and then to the humans the tragic consequences of their actions. God first tells the snake that despite its apparent victory, it is destined for defeat, to eat dust.
He's talking about the snake convinced Eve and Adam to eat the apple or eat from the tree of knowledge. Okay? And then they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. He's talking about God's punishment right now, for both of them, the snake and the humans.
God promises that one day a seed or a descendant will come from the woman who's going to deliver a lethal strike to the snake's head.
So it's going to be a descendant. Here comes the bloodline, okay? The bloodline starts out right here, okay? See, first it was just humans, but now don't worry, there's going to be a bloodline that's going to save everybody. It's going to be a royal bloodline that saves us all.
Which sounds like great news, but this victory is going to come with a cost, because the snake too will deliver a lethal strike to the descendant's heel as it's being crushed. It's a very mysterious promise of this wounded victor. But in the flow of the story so far, you see this is an act of God's grace. The humans, they've just rebelled, and what does God do? He promised...
What does God do? He gives them a royal bloodline. He gives them a promise of a bloodline. He gives them a promise of kings, of dictators, okay? Because the humans were given their chance. The citizens, the serfs, the non-royal blood people, they had their chance, and they screwed it up, right? And so God has to swoop in and pick a bloodline, a good royal bloodline, so, because humans are just, regular humans are just too evil. You got to leave it in the hands of the kings, okay? That's what God is saying, huh? Okay, right. Okay, that makes sense.
Promises to rescue them. But this doesn't erase the consequences of the humans' decision. So God informs them that now every aspect of their life together, at home and out in the field, it's going to be fraught with grief and pain because of the rebellion, all leading to their death.
Yep. If you go against the king, This is what happens. You go against the bloodline, right? Because that's what the whole Bible is about, a bloodline. To Noah, to Abraham, through Moses, King David, King Saul, all the all the way down to Jesus. They all have the same bloodline, the same monarchy. And if you go against the monarchy, you'll get kicked out and try and eat knowledge. You'll get punished.
From here,
that sounds like God. It doesn't sound like a king. No. That sounds like God, really? It sounds like a king to me.
Story then spirals downward. Chapters 3 through 11, they trace the widening ripple effect of the rebellion and of human relationships fracturing at every level. So there's a story about two brothers, Cain and Abel. Cain's so jealous of his brother that he wants to murder him. And God warns him not to give in to the temptation, but he does anyway. He murders him in the field. So Cain then
So they got this story about Cain and Abel. Everyone knows about it. One wanted to give God vegetables, and one wanted to give animal sacrifices. And, the one brother killed the other brother. The vegetable guy killed the meat guy. And then this guy's the son of him, I think, and he's, goes crazy, starts just being, against God or whatever, being against the king.
That they descended from the gods. And like Lamech, they acquire as many wives as they wanted, and they produce the Nephilim, these great warriors of old. Whichever view is right, the point is that humans are building kingdoms that fill God's world with violence and even more corruption. In response, we're told that God is broken with grief. Humanity is ruining his good world, and they're ruining each other. And so out of a passion to protect the goodness of his world, he washes it clean of humanity's evil with the great flood. But he protects one blameless human, Noah.
Yeah, only one human is is innocent. Abraham's, because he's going to be, he goes Noah, then Abraham comes on later on. But God is saying, this bloodline from Noah, we've washed away all the other evil humans. Now we just have this royal blood of Noah. And I'm going to promise you that his bloodline will come a time where it's going to be called, Abraham is going to come, one of his descendants. And then his descendants are going to be the kings of everything. And this bloodline should be worshipped almost like God, okay? And if you go against the kings, or the king's version, or this story that is written by Moses,
and his family, and he commissions him as a new Adam. He repeats the divine blessing and commissions him to go.
See, it's a new Adam. See, the first Adam was this non-royal bloodline pieces of garbage, right? Just commoners. But Noah, now he's going to be the new Adam with royal blood. He's the only one. If you don't have the royal blood, you're just garbage, okay? You're going to be killed in a flood, okay? Because only the royal bloodline is worth anything, okay?
To go out into the world. And so our hopes are really high, but then Noah fails too, and also in a garden. He goes and he plants a vineyard, and he gets drunk out of his mind. And then one of his sons, Ham, does something shameful to his father in the tent. And so here we have our new Adam, naked and ashamed, just like the first. And the downward spiral begins again. It all leads to the foundation of the city of Babylon. The people of ancient Mesopotamia, they come together around this new technology they have, the brick. And they can make cities and towers bigger and faster than anybody's ever done before. And they want to build a new kind of tower that will reach up to the gods, and they will make a great name for themselves. It's an image of human rebellion and arrogance. It's the garden rebellion now writ large. And so God humbles their pride and scatters them. Now this is a diverse group of stories, but you can see they're all exploring the same basic point. God keeps giving humans the chance to do the right thing with his world, and humans keep ruining it.
Now, what the story says is, in the first part of the story, Adam and Eve ruined it, right? Then their sons, Abraham and Abel and Cain, one killed the other, so they ruined it. And then his grandson ruined it, right? And they just kept ruining it and ruining it and ruining it until finally God said, no, only this one bloodline, only this monarchy over here, only this bloodline is worthy of surviving. And God killed all the regular humans that didn't have this bloodline, right? And then Noah is the only one existing in his family and blah, 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 blah. And he screws up. But what does God do with him? He forgives him. He punishes him, but he forgives him. Okay? Remember, the reason why Jesus died on the cross is because God couldn't forgive, supposedly, what Adam and Eve did or whatever, right? So, the thing is that if you're a human, non-royal, you're going to never be forgiven. But if you are royal, then you will be forgiven. That's what I'm hearing.
These stories are making a claim that we live in a good world that we have turned bad. That we've all chosen to define good and evil for ourselves, and so we all contribute to this world of broken relationships, leading to conflict and violence and ultimately death. But there's hope. God promised that one day a descendant would come.
A descendant! Oh boy, it's not about a bloodline or a monarchy.
Wounded victor who will defeat evil at its source. And so despite humanity's evil, God is determined to bless and rescue his world. And so the big question, of course, is what is God going to do? And the next story, The Hinge, offers the answer. The book of Genesis. In the first video, we saw how chapters 1 through 11 set up the basic storyline of the Bible. God has created all things, and he makes humans in his image to rule the world on his behalf. The humans choose sin and rebellion, and so the world spins out of control into violence and death, all leading up to the rebellion and scattering of the people in Babylon. And so the big question is, what is God going to do to rescue and redeem his world? Well, out of that scattering at Babylon, the author traces a genealogy of just one family that leads eventually to a man named Abram, later known as just one family that leads eventually to a man traces a genealogy of just one family that leads eventually to a man named Abram, later known traces a genealogy of just one family that leads eventually to a man named Abram, later known as traces a genealogy of just one family that leads eventually to a man named Abram, later known as Abraham. And God
Really? This isn't about a monarchy, it's not about a bloodline. Really?
God's promise to Abraham at the beginning of chapter 12 opens up a whole new movement in the story. God calls Abraham to leave his home and go to the land of Canaan, which God says will become his one day. And in that land, God promises to make Abraham into a great nation, to make his name great, and to bless him. Now, these promises are connected back to earlier parts of the book. So Babylon had arrogantly tried to make a great name for itself, and that didn't go over very well. But God, in his generosity, is going to bestow a great name on this no-name guy, Abraham. And God's blessing of Abraham echoes all the way back to that original blessing God gave humanity in the beginning. So the question is, why is God going to bless Abraham and his family? And the last line of God's promise makes this clear. So that all the families of the earth will find God's blessing in you.
Yeah, because he couldn't forgive Adam and Eve. This is a way for, to him, because they were humans. See, this is this is a monarchy. This is a king, okay? Abraham, and his bloodline is his bloodline is blessed. Is blessed. His royal blood is better than everyone else's blood.
Yeah. Now this is key for understanding.
And keep in mind, who wrote this book? Moses.
The whole rest of the biblical story. God's plan is to rescue and bless his rebellious world through Abraham's family. And this is why the whole...
Are you serious? Through Abraham's bloodline. Through Abraham's family. Yeah.
The rest of the Old Testament story is just going to focus on this one family.
Yep, because it's all about a monarchy. It's all about a bloodline.
And ultimately, this is the promise that gets picked up by the later biblical prophets and poets who say that its fulfillment will come through Israel's messianic king, whose reign will bring justice and peace to all of the nations.
Yep, through their king. Yep, through their king, through this monarchy, through this bloodline.
Now, at this point of the story, none of that's clear. You just have to keep reading and watch the promise develop. And so the rest of the book focuses on Abraham and his family. First, Abraham himself.